Before you read, please tell me honestly in the comments what you would do in my situation, because I genuinely feel like my life has been flipped upside down, and I don't trust my own judgment anymore. I'm not posting this for sympathy. I really need outside perspectives, because the people I would normally go to for advice are part of the problem. AITA 9F have been with my partner, Daniel 31M, for almost 6 years. When I say 6 years, I mean 6 years of building a life together in every sense. We met when we were both struggling to get our careers off the ground. I was working to part-time jobs while finishing school, and he had just started an entry-level position at a company he hated but needed to survive. Back then we were broken the way only people in their early 20s can be. Our dates were grocery store pasta and cheap wine on the floor of my tiny apartment, because I didn't even have a proper dining table yet. But we were happy. We dreamed together about better jobs, traveling, eventually buying a house. Over time, things slowly got better. I finished school and found a stable job. He changed companies and started earning more. We moved into a nicer apartment together 3 years ago, and we even started talking seriously about getting engaged sometime next year. To me, Daniel wasn't just my boyfriend, he was my best friend. The person I called when something good happened, and the person I cried to when something went wrong. But there's another person who has always been just as important in my life. My best friend Maya, opening parenthesis to 8F closing parenthesis. Maya and I met in our second year of college. We were assigned to the same group project and instantly clicked. She was the loud, confident type who could talk to anyone, while I've always been more quiet and cautious. Somehow our personalities balanced each other perfectly. She became the sister I never had. She helped me study for exams, celebrated every small win in my life, and sat with me through my worst moments. When my dad passed away 2 years ago, she was the one who practically lived at my apartment for a week, making sure I ate and slept. Naturally, when Daniel and I got serious, I introduced them, and they got along great. At the time I thought that was the best possible outcome. My two favorite people becoming friends felt like proof that my life was going exactly the way it should. Over the years, the three of us became a little trio. We watched movies together, went out for drinks, had long conversations about work, relationships, and life. Maya would sometimes come over for dinner and stay late just talking with us. Looking back now, those memories make my stomach twist, because I don't know which moments were real anymore. About 4 months ago, things started changing in small ways that didn't seem important at the time. Daniel started mentioning Maya more often. Nothing suspicious, just casual things like Maya recommended this show, or Maya said her office might be hiring. I didn't think anything of it, because we were all close. Then they started texting more frequently. Again, I wasn't bothered. If anything, I was glad they had a friendly relationship. I trusted both of them completely. The idea that something inappropriate could happen between them honestly never crossed my mind. But there were tiny moments that, in hindsight, feel different now. Sometimes when Maya came over, Daniel would seem a little more energetic than usual. They would tease each other or joke about things I didn't fully understand. I assumed it was just normal friendship chemistry. One evening we all went out for drinks, and at one point I went to the restroom. When I came back, they were both laughing really hard about something and immediately stopped when they saw me. I remember jokingly saying, "Wow, secret conversation," and they both brushed it off. At the time I didn't question it. I trusted them. About 2 weeks ago everything changed. Daniel and I were at home watching a movie. He fell asleep halfway through, which isn't unusual because he works long hours. His phone was on the coffee table and started buzzing repeatedly. At first I ignored it, but the notifications kept coming. Eventually I glanced at the screen and saw Maya's name pop up. My first thought was that something might be wrong. Maya has had a few rough patches in her life, so I assumed maybe she needed help. So I unlocked his phone to check, and I wish more than anything that I hadn't, because the messages I saw didn't look like the conversation between two friends. They were flirting, not subtle either. There were messages about missing each other, jokes that sounded intimate, and conversations late at night. After I had gone to bed, my heart started pounding so hard I could barely breathe, but I kept scrolling. The messages went back months. Months of emotional conversations, talking about how they felt understood by each other, how things just happened, how they didn't mean for their feelings to develop. One message from Daniel said, "Every time we're all together, I feel guilty looking at her." Another from Maya said, "I hate pretending nothing is happening between us." Reading that felt like someone stabbed me in the chest. I sat there on the couch for almost 3 hours after that, just staring at the wall while he slept next to me. My entire relationship suddenly felt like a lie. The next morning I confronted Daniel. At first he tried to deny it. Then when I told him exactly what I saw, he broke down and admitted that they had developed feelings for each other a few months ago. He insisted nothing physical ever happened. According to him, it was just emotional, and they were both confused. That explanation somehow made it worse. Because if it was only emotional, that means they consciously chose to keep nurturing those feelings behind my back. I asked him how long it had been going on. He said around 3 months. 3 months of secret conversations while sitting across from me at dinner. 3 months of Maya coming to my apartment and hugging me like nothing was wrong. I felt sick. Later that day I called Maya. I asked her directly if she had feelings for Daniel. She started crying immediately. She said she never meant for it to happen, that it started with harmless conversations and slowly became something deeper. She said she felt guilty every time she saw me, but didn't know how to stop. Hearing her say that nearly broke me, because guilt didn't stop her. Nothing stopped either of them. I told both of them I needed space and haven't spoken to them properly in 2 weeks. During those 2 weeks, Daniel has been constantly messaging me saying he made a mistake and wants to fix things. He says he'll cut all contact with Maya if I give him another chance. Maya sent me a long message apologizing and saying she understands if I never forgive her, but I feel like the ground under my life has disappeared. These were the 2 people I trusted most in the world, and they betrayed me. Together. Part of me keeps thinking about the 6 years Daniel and I spent building a life, the memories, the plans, the future we talked about. Another part of me feels like if you could hide something like this from me, maybe our relationship was never as strong as I believed. And when it comes to Maya, I honestly don't know if I can ever forgive her. Losing a partner hurts, but losing your best friend at the same time feels unbearable. So please tell me honestly, am I the asshole if I cut both of them out of my life and walk away? Or should I try to save the relationship with Daniel since he claims nothing physical happened? Because right now I genuinely don't know what the right decision is. Before I start, please give me your honest opinion in the comments because I'm genuinely desperate for advice. I've been going back and forth in my head for weeks and I don't know if I'm being dramatic or if I'm justified in how hurt and angry I feel. I feel like the people I trusted the most completely blindsided me. And now I don't know who I can believe anymore. I 3 and grew up in a very small family. My mom passed away when I was 15. And after that it was mostly just me, my dad, and my younger brother Chris to 9M. Losing my mum changed our family a lot. My dad worked long hours to keep things together, and because of that Chris and I became really close. I basically helped raise him through high school. Because of that, Chris has always been more than just a brother to me. He's been my best friend. We've shared everything, growing up together, helping each other through breakups, job struggles, life decisions. We've always been the kind of siblings who talk almost every day. When I met my wife Lena 31F about 8 years ago, Chris was one of the first people I introduced her to. At the time I was incredibly proud of my little family, and I loved that the two most important people in my life got along so well. Lena fit into my family almost instantly. She was warm, funny, and incredibly supportive. My dad loved her. Chris liked her too. We all started spending a lot of time together, holidays, weekend dinners, even vacations once or twice. When Lena and I got married 4 years ago, Chris was my best man. I remember standing next to him at the wedding thinking how lucky I was to have a brother like him. 4 years, everything seemed perfect. Lena and I built a good life together. We both had stable jobs, bought a house 2 years ago, and recently started talking about trying 4 kids soon. Chris also lived nearby, so he would often come over for dinner or help me with projects around the house. Looking back now, it feels like my entire life was quietly falling apart while I had no idea. About 6 months ago, Chris went through a rough breakup with his girlfriend. They had been together for almost 3 years, and she suddenly moved out. He was devastated. I remember him calling me late at night, saying he didn't know what to do with himself. Of course, I told him he could come over whenever he needed to. That's what family does, and he did. Sometimes he'd come by just to hang out and distract himself. Sometimes Lena would cook dinner for all of us, and we'd watch movies or play board games. Lena was incredibly supportive toward him during that time. She would listen to him talk about the breakup and give advice. I honestly thought it was really kind of her to help him through such a difficult time. But after a while I started noticing something strange. Chris was coming over a lot. Sometimes when I wasn't even home yet from work. At first I didn't think much of it. Lena works from home most days, so I figured maybe he just needed someone to talk to. Then there were little moments that started bothering me. One evening came home early and found them sitting very close together on the couch, talking quietly. When they noticed me walk in, they suddenly moved apart like they'd been caught doing something wrong. I joked about it at the time and they both laughed it off, but something about the moment stayed in the back of my mind. A few weeks later, another strange thing happened. I asked Chris if he wanted to grab dinner one night, like we usually did every couple weeks. He told me he was busy. Later that same night, Lena casually mentioned she had gone out earlier to grab coffee with a friend. I didn't connect the dots at the time. It wasn't until about a month later that everything started unraveling. I had to travel for work for 3 days. Normally Lena and I text throughout the day when I'm gone, but this time she seemed a little distant. Her responses were shorter than usual, and sometimes she took hours to reply. I assumed she was just busy. When I got home after the trip, Chris happened to be there helping her fix something in the kitchen. Again, nothing seemed obviously wrong, but I noticed they were unusually quiet around me that evening. Then, last month something happened that changed everything. I borrowed Chris's laptop while he was at my house because mine had died and I needed to send an email quickly. While opening the browser, a messaging app popped up automatically, and there it was, a conversation between Chris and Lena. At first I thought it was just normal chatting, but the messages I saw made my stomach drop. They weren't just friendly, they were deeply personal, emotional, intimate. They were talking about missing each other, about how difficult it was pretending things were normal around me, about how they never expected to fall for each other. My hands were literally shaking as I scrolled. The messages went back almost 5 months. 5 months of secret conversations behind my back. 5 months of them building some kind of relationship while I was completely clueless. One message from Lena said something that I can't get out of my head. She wrote, "He trusts us both so much." That's the worst part. Reading that line felt like someone punched the air out of my lungs. I didn't confront them right away. I honestly didn't even know how. For 2 days I walked around feeling like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Eventually I sat them both down in my living room and told them exactly what I had seen. The silence that followed was unbearable. Chris started apologizing almost immediately. Lena just sat there staring at the floor. After a while they admitted that they had developed feelings for each other months ago while spending time together during his breakup. They insisted they never slept together. They claim it was just emotional. I don't know if I believe that. What hurts the most isn't just the betrayal from my wife. It's the betrayal from my brother. This is the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world. The person I defended my entire life. The person who stood next to me at my wedding. And the whole time they were building a secret emotional relationship behind my back. Since that confrontation, I've been staying at a friend's place because I couldn't stand being in the house. Lena keeps texting me saying she made a terrible mistake and wants to fix our marriage. She says she cut Chris out of her life completely if I give her another chance. Chris has also called me dozens of times apologizing and saying he hates himself for hurting me, but I feel like something inside me broke when I read those messages. I don't know if I can ever trust either of them again. At the same time, cutting them both out of my life feels like losing my entire family in one moment. So please tell me honestly, am I wrong for wanting to walk away from both my wife and my brother after this? Or should I at least try to fix my marriage even if my relationship with my brother might never recover? Because right now I feel like no matter what decision I make, I lose. Before I get into this, I really need honest opinions from people who aren't involved in my life. Please tell me what you think in the comments, because I've been losing sleep over this situation, and I genuinely don't know if I'm being unreasonable or if the people around me have completely betrayed my trust. I feel like everything I believed about my family has been shaken, and I don't know how to move forward. I 3-4F have always been the responsible one in my family. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. Growing up, my parents struggled financially, and because of that, I ended up taking on a lot of responsibilities pretty early. I helped my younger siblings with homework, got a job as soon as I was old enough, and tried to support my parents however I could. I never resented it though. If anything, it made me really close to my family. We were the kind of people who believed that family always comes first. That belief is exactly why the situation I'm in now hurts so much. My younger sister Nina, 28F, has always been a little more carefree than me. She's fun, spontaneous, and the kind of person who makes friends everywhere she goes. Growing up, she always joked that I was the second mom of the family. Despite our different personalities, we've always been close. I helped her through college, let her stay with me for a few months when she was between apartments, and I've always tried to be someone she could rely on. About 5 years ago I started my own small business. It wasn't anything glamorous, just a bakery. Baking had always been my passion, and after years of saving money, I finally took the risk of opening a little shop in our city. It was terrifying at first. There were days I thought I had made a huge mistake, but slowly the business started growing. People in the neighborhood loved it. We became known for our custom cakes and pastries, and after about 2 years I was finally making enough to feel stable. That's when Nina approached me with an idea. She said she wanted to help me expand the business. She had studied marketing in college and believed she could help bring in more customers through social media and branding. At the time it sounded like a great idea. I trusted her completely. And honestly, I loved the thought of building something together with my sister. So I brought her in as my business partner. At first things went really well. Nina helped redesign our website, started posting regularly on social media, and organized a few promotional events that actually brought in a lot of new customers. I was incredibly proud of what we were building together. For the first time it felt like all those years of hard work were finally paying off. But about 8 months ago, things started changing in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. Nina started becoming very secretive about certain aspects of the business. She handled most of the marketing and some of the financial planning, which I trusted her with because she always seemed confident about what she was doing. If I asked questions, she would usually say something like, "Don't worry, I've got it under control." At first I didn't think much of it, but over time I started noticing small things that didn't make sense, invoices that seemed higher than expected, suppliers changing without much explanation, money coming in that didn't match the numbers I thought we should be making. Whenever I brought it up, Nina would brush it off. She'd say things like it's just part of scaling a business, or you're stressing too much about the details, because she's my sister. I believed her. I trusted her. Then about 3 weeks ago something happened that completely changed everything. One of our longtime suppliers came into the bakery to drop off an order. While we were talking, he casually mentioned something about the second location. I laughed and said he must be mistaken, because we only had one shop. He looked confused. Then he told me that Nina had been ordering supplies for another bakery under a very similar name in a nearby neighborhood. My heart immediately started racing. I asked him what he meant, and he said he assumed I already knew about it since Nina had introduced herself as the co-owner of both businesses. I closed the shop early that day and drove straight to the address he mentioned. And there it was. Another bakery. The name was almost identical to mine, just slightly changed. The branding looked extremely similar. The menu had several of the exact same recipes I created myself. I walked inside, feeling like I was in some kind of nightmare. And behind the counter was Nina. She looked absolutely shocked when she saw me. For a few seconds neither of us said anything. Then I asked her the only question I could think of. "What is this?" At first she tried to act like it wasn't a big deal. She said it was just a second branch she was testing out. But I knew immediately that wasn't true, because the money used to open that location came from our business account. After a long argument, she finally admitted the truth. For the past 6 months, she had been secretly using money from our shared business to open a separate bakery that she planned to run on her own. She said she didn't tell me because she knew I would overreact and try to control everything. Hearing that made me feel physically sick. This was the business I built from nothing. The recipes, the brand, the reputation, everything came from years of my work. And my own sister used my trust to build a competing business behind my back. The worst part is that when I confronted our parents about it, they didn't react the way I expected. Instead of being angry at Nina, they asked me to try to understand her perspective. They said she probably just wanted independence and didn't know how to talk to me about it. But to me, this isn't about independence. It's about betrayal. She used my money, my ideas, and my trust to secretly build something that could eventually compete with the very business I sacrificed years of my life to create. Since that day I've removed her access to our accounts and told her I'm considering legal action to recover the money she used. Now my family is furious with me. They say I'm destroying my relationship with my sister over a misunderstanding, but I don't see how this is a misunderstanding. It feels like a calculated betrayal. So please tell me honestly. Am I the asshole for wanting to cut my sister out of the business and possibly take legal action against her? Or am I overreacting and letting anger destroy my family? I never thought I would be the kind of person to post something like this online, but I'm at a point where I feel completely isolated and I genuinely need outside perspectives. The people in my life are either involved in the situation or have already chosen sides, and I can't tell anymore if I'm justified in how I feel or if I've let anger cloud my judgment. So please, if you read this whole thing, tell me honestly what you would do in my situation, because right now I feel like the life I spent years building was quietly taken from me by someone I trusted more than almost anyone else. I 37M have worked in construction for most of my adult life. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest, and over the years, I've become really good at it. I started as a laborer right out of high school, slowly worked my way up, learned everything I could about the trade, and eventually started taking on bigger responsibilities at the company I worked for. About 10 years ago, my best friend Mark, 36M on our job site, we were assigned to the same crew, and over time we became really close. Mark is the kind of person who can talk to anyone. He's confident, outgoing, and incredibly persuasive, where I'm more quiet and practical. He's the one who dreams big and pushes people to take risks. For years we talked about starting our own construction company together. At first it was just late night conversations after work. We'd joke about how we could run projects better than the bosses we worked for. But eventually those conversations became more serious. About 4 years ago, we finally decided to take the leap. I had been saving money for years, and Mark had some savings too. We pulled everything together and started a small contracting business. At the beginning it was just the two of us doing everything, meeting clients, handling permits, doing the actual construction work ourselves. It was exhausting, but it was also one of the most exciting times of my life. Slowly we started getting more jobs. Word of mouth spread. People trusted our work, and within 2 years, we were able to hire a small crew and start taking on larger projects. I truly believed Mark and I were building something that would support both of our families for decades, because that's what we talked about all the time. Our families even became close. My wife and his girlfriend would sometimes come to company events or barbecues we hosted for our crew. It felt like we were creating not just a business, but a community. Looking back now, I keep wondering if I missed warning signs along the way. About a year ago, Mark started pushing really hard for us to expand the company faster. He wanted to take on bigger contracts, invest in new equipment, and even open a small office downtown to make us look more professional to clients. I was a little hesitant because I've always been more cautious with money, but Mark convinced me it was the right move. He said, if we didn't grow now, we'd get stuck competing with smaller companies forever. Eventually I agreed. Over the next several months, we started bringing in more projects than ever before. From the outside, the business looked like it was thriving, but behind the scenes things were starting to feel strange. Mark began handling more of the financial side of the company. He said it would be easier if one person managed the accounts, invoices, and payments while the other focused on project management. Since I trusted him completely, I didn't question it. Then a few months ago I noticed that he had started taking meetings with potential clients without including me. When I asked about it, he said it was just quicker sometimes to handle things alone. Again, I trusted him. That trust is what makes what happened next feel like such a deep betrayal. About 3 weeks ago, one of our long-time subcontractors called me unexpectedly. He asked me why our company had split. I had no idea what he was talking about. He sounded confused and told me that Mark had contacted him about working on a large new project for his company. At first I thought it was just a misunderstanding. Until he sent me a link. It was a website for a brand new construction company. The name was different, but everything about it looked familiar. The style, the types of projects, even photos of work that Mark and I had completed together under our original business, except my name was nowhere on the site. Mark was listed as the sole owner. I felt like my heart stopped. I tried calling him immediately, but he didn't answer. When I finally confronted him later that evening, he admitted everything. For the past several months he had been quietly preparing to launch a new company on his own. He had used connections we built together to secure contracts under the new business. Some of the money from our existing company accounts had even been used to pay for the website and initial setup. When I asked him why he would do something like that after everything we built together, his answer honestly stunned me. He said he felt like he was doing most of the work in growing the company and believed he deserved full control of the business. He claimed he didn't think I had the same ambition as him and that I was holding the company back. Hearing That felt like someone erased 10 years of friendship and 4 years of hard work in one sentence. This wasn't just some random business partner. This was someone I trusted like a brother. Now, several of our employees are confused about what's happening. Some of our clients have already been contacted by Mark about moving their projects to his new company. Meanwhile, I'm left trying to figure out how much damage has already been done. I've spoken with a lawyer who says I might have grounds to take legal action since the original company was supposed to be a partnership. But here's where things get complicated. Mark has been telling mutual friends that I'm overreacting and trying to ruin his future out of jealousy. Some of them actually believe him. A few people have even told me I should just let him go and start fresh, instead of turning this into a legal fight. But to me, this doesn't feel like a simple disagreement. It feels like someone spent months secretly dismantling the business we built together while smiling to my face every day. So I really need to know, would I be the asshole if I take legal action against my former best friend for what he did? Or should I walk away and try to rebuild on my own, even if it means losing everything we worked for? Yesterday, I opened a folder that I was never supposed to see. By the time I finished reading what was inside, I realized that 2 of the people I trusted the most in my life had been lying to me for years. I still don't know if I'm reacting the right way or if my emotions are taking over, which is why I'm here asking strangers for advice. The people around me have very strong opinions about what I should do, but none of them are the ones who have to live with the consequences. So please read this and tell me honestly what you would do in my place. I 3OF grew up in a family where education was treated like the most important thing in the world. My parents immigrated when I was very young and worked incredibly hard to build a stable life. My dad worked double shifts for most of my childhood, and my mom took care of the house while also working part-time jobs whenever she could. Because of their sacrifices, I always felt a huge responsibility to succeed. I studied constantly growing up. Good grades weren't just expected in our house. They were basically the only acceptable outcome. Eventually, all that work paid off. I earned a scholarship to a good university and later got into a competitive graduate program. My parents were incredibly proud. But through all those years, the person who supported me the most was actually my cousin Leah to 9F. Leah and I grew up practically like sisters. Our families lived only a few blocks apart, so we spent most weekends together when we were kids. Even when we got older, we stayed really close. Leah was always more outgoing than me, while I was the quiet, studious one. She was the social butterfly who could walk into any room and instantly make friends. Despite our differences, we balanced each other well. When I got accepted into my graduate program, Leah was one of the first people I told. She celebrated with me like it was her own achievement. She even helped me move into my new apartment when I relocated for school. During my first year in the program, I met my boyfriend Evan opening parenthesis, 3-1 closing parenthesis. Evan was charming, funny, and incredibly supportive of my career goals. Dating during graduate school can be difficult because the workload is so intense, but he always seemed to understand when I was busy. Over time our relationship became serious. After about a year together, I introduced him to my family. That's when he met Leah. At first everything seemed completely normal. Leah liked him, my parents liked him, and I was happy that the people I loved all got along. We started having family dinners where Evan would come along. Leah would sometimes join us for coffee or group outings. Looking back now, there were probably small moments that should have caught my attention. But when you trust people completely, you don't look for problems that you never imagined could exist. About a year ago, I started noticing that Leah and Evan had developed a pretty friendly relationship. They would sometimes joke around with each other or talk about random things when we were all together. I thought it was nice that they got along occasionally. I'd even ask Leah to check in on Evan when I was overwhelmed with schoolwork and couldn't spend much time socializing. At the time it felt like a completely harmless thing to ask. Now I wish I had never done that. 2 days ago, I went to visit Leah at her apartment because she asked if I could help her organize some documents for a job application she was preparing. While we were going through her desk drawers, she stepped out to take a phone call. That's when I noticed the folder. It was sitting slightly open on the desk, and inside I could see printed screenshots of text messages. At first I thought they were just work-related conversations, but then I saw a name that made my stomach drop. Evan. I wish I could say I closed the folder and respected her privacy, but something in my gut told me to look closer. So I did, and what I found completely shattered my sense of reality. The screenshots were conversations between Leah and Evan that went back almost 2 years. 2 years. Some of the messages were flirty, some were deeply emotional. There were long discussions about their feelings, about how complicated everything was, and about how they needed to be careful not to hurt me. One message from Evan said something we'll probably never forget. He wrote, "She trusts us both more than anyone." That's what makes this so hard. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the pages. According to the messages, their relationship started as friendly conversations after we all met. But over time, those conversations turned into something more. There were messages about meeting up for coffee when I was busy studying, about how much they enjoyed spending time together. They kept telling each other they needed to set boundaries, but apparently those boundaries never really happened. I didn't even realize Leah had come back into the room until she suddenly shouted my name. She looked completely panicked when she saw the folder in my hands. The confrontation that followed was one of the most painful moments of my life. At first she tried to explain that nothing physical ever happened between them. She said their relationship was mostly emotional and that they stopped talking as much several months ago because the guilt was too much, but that didn't make it better. If anything, it made it worse, because it meant they both knew exactly how wrong it was and still kept it going 4 years. When I confronted Evan later that night, he admitted everything. He repeated the same thing Leah said, that they never crossed a physical line and that it was just emotional. But to me that doesn't change the betrayal. For almost 2 years the two people I trusted the most were secretly building a connection behind my back. What makes it even more painful is that during that time I was going through one of the most stressful periods of my life. Graduate school nearly broke me mentally at times. There were nights I cried from exhaustion and self-doubt. And while I was leaning on them for support, they were apparently leaning on each other. Now, both of them are begging for forgiveness. Evan says he will do anything to repair our relationship. Leah says she never wanted to hurt me and that she hates herself for letting things go that far. But I don't know how I'm supposed to trust either of them again. If I cut them both out of my life, I lose my partner and the cousin who has been like a sister to me since childhood. But if I forgive them, I'm afraid I'll always wonder what's happening behind my back. So please tell me honestly, would I be the asshole if I walked away from both of them completely after this? Or am I letting my anger destroy relationships that might still be salvageable? The worst part about betrayal isn't always the moment you discover it. Sometimes the worst part is realizing that the signs were there all along, and you trusted someone enough to ignore them. I'm writing this because I genuinely don't know what the right decision is anymore. My friends are divided. My family thinks I'm being too harsh, and the person who hurt me is insisting that I'm overreacting. so I need honest opinions from people who aren't involved. If you read this whole thing, please tell me what you would do. I 35F have been friends with Rachel 34F for almost 20 years. We met when we were teenagers in high school. Back then we were inseparable. Rachel was the loud, funny one who could turn any boring situation into something entertaining. I was the quieter one who usually preferred staying in with a book rather than going to parties. But somehow our personalities worked perfectly together. Over the years, we went through everything, side by side: college applications, terrible part-time jobs, breakups, family problems. Even when life took us in slightly different directions, we stayed close. Rachel was one of the few people who truly knew everything about my life. That includes my biggest dream. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to open my own bookstore. Not a huge corporate-style bookstore, but a small independent place where people could come read, have coffee, and discover books they might never find in big chain stores. It was something I talked about constantly for years. Most people treated it like a cute fantasy. Rachel did in single quotes d. She always told me I should actually do it someday. About 3 years ago, after working a corporate job that I absolutely hated for nearly a decade, I finally decided to take the risk. I used most of my savings and a small loan to open a tiny bookstore in my city, but it was terrifying at first. Independent bookstores don't exactly have the easiest path to success, and there were many nights I lay awake wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. But slowly, things started working out. People in the community loved the store. We hosted book clubs, small author events, and even weekend story hours for kids. It started becoming a little gathering place for readers in the neighborhood. Rachel was incredibly supportive during all of this. She visited often, helped me organize events, and sometimes even volunteered to work the register when I was overwhelmed. I was grateful to have a friend who believed in my dream as much as I did. About a year ago, Rachel lost her job unexpectedly. She had been working in marketing for a small company that suddenly shut down. She was devastated and worried about money. Since the bookstore was doing fairly well by that point, I offered her a part-time job, helping me run events and manage social media. She accepted immediately. At first it felt amazing to work together. Rachel was great with customers and had lots of creative ideas for promoting the store. She helped organize themed events and started building a bigger online following for us. For a while it honestly felt like the bookstore was becoming even more successful because of her help. But about 6 months ago, I started noticing small things that didn't quite make sense. Rachel began taking more control over certain aspects of the business. She insisted on handling communication with some local authors and publishers directly, because she said it was easier if one person coordinated everything. Since I trusted her, I didn't question it. Then she started suggesting changes that felt a little strange. For example, she wanted to start ordering larger quantities of certain books than we normally would. When I asked why, she said she had future plans that would make it worthwhile. I assumed she meant bigger events or something similar. Around the same time, she also began networking heavily with people in the local literary community. She attended meetups, book fairs, and industry gatherings more frequently than I did. Again, I thought she was just helping the bookstore grow. Then about 2 weeks ago, something happened that completely blindsided me. One of our regular customers came into the store and casually mentioned a new bookstore opening soon across town. I didn't think much of it at first. Competition is normal in any business. But then he said something strange. He said the owner sounded a lot like my friend Rachel. At first I laughed because that sounded ridiculous, but later that evening curiosity got the better of me. So I looked it up online. And that's when I saw it, a website for a brand new bookstore opening next month. The concept was almost identical to mine. A cozy reading space with coffee, book clubs, and community events. But what really made my stomach drop was the name listed under owner, Rachel. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, hoping I had misunderstood something. But the more I looked, the worse it got. Several of the upcoming events listed on her site looked suspiciously similar to ideas we had discussed for my store. Even some of the authors scheduled for appearances were people Rachel had recently told me she was still negotiating with. When I confronted her about it the next day, she didn't even try to deny it. She admitted that she had been planning to open her own bookstore for months. She said working at mine helped her learn the business and build connections with authors and suppliers. When I asked why she never told me, her answer honestly shocked me. She said she didn't think I would react well and believed it was better to keep things separate until everything was ready. But to me, it doesn't feel separate at all. She used my store, my connections, and my trust to build something that will directly compete with the business I sacrificed years of my life to create. Some mutual friends are telling me I'm overreacting and that competition is normal in business, but I can't shake the feeling that this goes beyond normal competition. It feels like someone I trusted walked into my dream, studied it from the inside, and then recreated it for themselves. Now I'm seriously considering cutting Rachel out of my life completely and warning some of the authors and partners she connected with through my store about what happened. But a few people say that would be petty and vindictive. So please tell me honestly, would I be the asshole if I ended my friendship with Rachel and refused to support her new bookstore after everything that happened? Or am I letting my feelings get in the way of something that's just part of doing business? I didn't find out about the lie from the person who told it. I found out because a stranger congratulated me. That moment lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it completely changed the way I see someone I've trusted for most of my life. Now I'm stuck trying to figure out if I'm justified in feeling betrayed or if I'm about to destroy a relationship or something I'm misunderstanding. So please read this and tell me honestly what you would do, because the people around me are giving very mixed advice. I 3M have been friends with Aaron 3 since we were kids. We met when we were about 9 years old because our families lived on the same street. From the beginning we were basically inseparable. We rode bikes together, played video games, went to the same schools, and even ended up attending the same university. Aaron was always the more confident one out of the two of us. He was charismatic, outgoing, and naturally good at talking to people. I've always been more reserved and analytical. Despite those differences, we worked well together. After college, we both ended up in the tech industry, though in slightly different roles. I became a software developer, while Aaron focused more on product management and business strategy. About 5 years ago, we started talking seriously about creating our own startup. At first, it was just one of those what-if conversations people have when they're tired of working for other companies. But the more we talked about it, the more real the idea became. Eventually we started developing a product together during our free time. I was responsible for most of the technical side, building the software, designing the infrastructure, fixing bugs, and handling updates. Aaron focused on the business side, researching the market, pitching the idea, and networking with potential investors. It felt like the perfect partnership. 2 years ago, we officially launched the product. At the beginning, it was small, just a few hundred users. But gradually it started gaining traction. People liked what we built, and positive reviews started spreading online. Within a year we had thousands of users and a growing number of paying customers. For the first time it felt like our idea might actually become a real company. During that time Aaron began taking on more public-facing responsibilities. He attended tech conferences, spoke to potential investors, and represented our startup at networking events. I was fine with that because public speaking has never been my strength. I preferred staying behind the scenes, focusing on improving the product itself. Everything seemed to be working. Or at least that's what I thought. About 2 months ago, Aaron told me he had been talking to a group of investors who might be interested in funding our startup. This was huge news. Outside investment would allow us to hire a proper team, expand the product, and finally leave our full-time jobs to focus entirely on the company. Aaron handled most of those discussions because he was better at pitching ideas. He kept telling me things were progressing well. Then last week something happened that completely blindsided me. I was attending a small tech meetup in my city, not representing the startup or anything, just going to listen to some talks and meet other developers. During a break between presentations, a guy I had never met before approached me. He asked if I was the developer behind Aaron's startup. I said yes, assuming he had just heard about the project through mutual connections. Then he said something that made me freeze. He congratulated me on my acquisition. I had no idea what he was talking about. When I asked him to clarify, he looked confused and said he thought I already knew. Apparently, during a startup conference the week before, Aaron had publicly announced that our company was in the process of being acquired by a larger tech firm, a deal worth several $1 million. I thought the guy must have misunderstood something, because Aaron had never mentioned anything about selling the company. Not once. As soon as I got home that evening, I started researching online, and that's when I found it. An article from a tech blog covering the conference. The headline mentioned Aaron by name and described him as the founder of our startup. The article quoted him talking about a potential acquisition deal and the future of the product. My name was mentioned only once. As a developer who assisted in building the platform, I felt physically sick reading that. For the past 5 years, I have spent countless nights and weekends building that product from scratch. The entire codebase is my work. And now I was being described like some minor helper. When I confronted Aaron the next day, he admitted that the acquisition discussions were real, but his explanation made things even worse. He said he didn't tell me because the negotiations were complicated and he didn't want to stress me out. Then he said something that I still can't believe. He told me that investors and buyers prefer dealing with a single clear founder figure, and that it was easier for him to present himself as the main creator of the company. According to him, it was just a strategic decision. He insisted that if the acquisition actually goes through, I'll still receive a fair portion. But the more I think about it, the more betrayed I feel. 4 years we built this company together. At least that's what I believed. But now it seems like he has been quietly positioning himself as the sole face and possibly the sole owner of the entire business. Since that conversation, I've been seriously considering hiring a lawyer to review everything and protect my rights before any deal happens. Aaron thinks I'm overreacting. He says legal action would destroy the acquisition opportunity and ruin both of our futures. But from my perspective, it feels like he already tried to erase me from the story. So now I need honest opinions. Would I be the asshole if I involve lawyers and potentially stop the acquisition until my role and ownership are properly recognized? Or should I trust Aaron and risk losing everything we built together? "3 weeks ago, my sister stood in my living room crying and calling me selfish. My parents were sitting on the couch behind her, looking at me like I had just done something unforgivable. And the strangest part of the whole situation is that the thing they're angry at me for is something I spent almost 15 years working for. I honestly don't know if I'm being cold-hearted or if my family is expecting something completely unreasonable from me. I've gone back and forth in my head about it's so many times that I feel like I can't trust my own judgment anymore. So I'm hoping people who have no emotional connection to this situation can tell me what they think. I39M have spent most of my adult life building my career. When I was younger, my family didn't have much money. My parents did their best, but we lived paycheck to paycheck for most of my childhood. Because of that, I became very focused on creating financial stability for myself. I studied hard, went to college on scholarships and loans, and eventually got into the real estate industry. The first few years were rough. Real estate is incredibly competitive, and there were months when I barely made enough money to cover rent, but I stuck with it. Over time I learned the business, built connections, and slowly started seeing success. About 8 years ago I opened my own small real estate brokerage. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. I worked insane hours during those early years. Late nights, weekends, constant networking. My social life basically disappeared because I was so focused on growing the company, but eventually all that effort started paying off. Today the business is doing well. I have a small team of agents working with me, and financially I'm in a position I never imagined when I was younger. About 2 years ago I made one of the biggest purchases of my life. I bought a beautiful house, not a mansion or anything crazy, but a large home with a big yard in a nice neighborhood. For me it represented something deeply personal, proof that all those years of hard work had actually meant something. My family was incredibly proud when I bought it. My younger sister Emily 35F was especially excited. She always joked that she expected to host family holidays there because it was the nicest house in the family. Emily and I have always had a decent relationship, though we're very different people. While I've always been very career-focused and cautious with money, Emily has lived a much more spontaneous life. She's switched jobs several times, traveled a lot, and tends to make decisions based more on emotion than long-term planning. For a long time, that wasn't really a problem. But about 6 months ago, Emily's life took a difficult turn. She went through a messy divorce. Her ex-husband moved out of their apartment and stopped contributing financially almost immediately. Emily suddenly found herself struggling to cover rent and other expenses on her own. At first I tried to help where I could. I gave her some money to help with bills and offered emotional support during the divorce process. Then one evening, she asked if we could talk privately. She told me she was thinking about moving in with me temporarily while she got back on her feet. Honestly, I felt sympathetic to her situation, but the house I bought was something I had carefully designed for my own lifestyle. I work from home frequently, host business meetings there, and I value having a quiet space to recharge. I told her she could stay for a few weeks if she truly needed a place during an emergency, but I wasn't comfortable with the idea of a long-term living arrangement. At the time she seemed to understand, but a few days later she came back with a completely different proposal. She asked if she and her 2 kids could move into my house indefinitely. Her argument was that the house was too big for one person anyway, and that family should support each other during difficult times. I told her gently, but firmly, that I wasn't comfortable with that. I offered to help her find a smaller, affordable place and even offered to help with a few months of rent if necessary, but she didn't react the way I expected. She got extremely upset. She started saying things like, "You have all the space and money, and you won't even help your own family." When our parents heard about the situation, they surprisingly took her side. They argued that since I'm financially stable and live alone, letting Emily and her kids stay with me would be the compassionate thing to do. But from my perspective, this isn't a temporary favor. Emily's financial situation isn't something that will likely change overnight. If she moves in, there's a very real possibility that she could stay 4 years. And as much as I love my sister and my nieces, the idea of completely changing my living situation indefinitely makes me deeply uncomfortable. The argument finally exploded 3 weeks ago when Emily came to my house with my parents. She assumed that if we talked face to face, I would change my mind. Instead, the conversation turned into a massive confrontation. Emily accused me of caring more about a house than my own family. My parents said they were disappointed in me and that they raised me to value family above everything else. I tried explaining that I was still willing to help financially or assist her in finding housing, but they insisted that letting her move in was the only real way to help. Since that day, things have been extremely tense. Emily barely speaks to me anymore, and my parents keep hinting that I'm being selfish. Part of me feels guilty because I know she's going through a difficult time, but another part of me feels like I'm being pressured to give up the life I worked incredibly hard to build. So I really need to know, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into the house I worked over a decade to afford? Or am I justified in wanting to keep my home as my own space, even if it upsets my family? The moment that changed everything wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no confrontation, no shocking discovery like you see in movies. It was just a single sentence spoken casually at a dinner table, and somehow that one sentence made me realize that someone I trusted with one of the most important parts of my life had been lying to me for years. I'm writing this because I honestly don't know if my reaction is justified, or if I'm about to destroy a relationship that could still be saved. The people around me are giving completely different opinions, and the person at the center of this situation insists I'm blowing everything out of proportion. So I really need honest perspectives from people who aren't emotionally involved. I, for 1M, have a daughter named Lily 17F. Her mother and I divorced when Lily was only 3 years old. The separation wasn't messy or dramatic. We simply realized that we were very different people who wanted different things in life. After the divorce, Lily primarily lived with her mother because she had a more stable living situation at the time. I still saw Lily regularly, usually every other weekend and during holidays. Over the years, I tried my best to stay involved in her life despite the distance. I attended school plays, soccer games, parent-teacher conferences whenever I could. I called her often and tried to make sure she knew that even though I wasn't living in the same house, I still cared deeply about being part of her life. But there was always one person who had a much bigger role in raising her day. Her stepfather, Mark. Lily's mom married Mark when Lily was about 6 years old. At first I was nervous about another man becoming a father figure in my daughter's life, but surprisingly, Mark turned out to be a decent guy. He was patient with Lily, supportive of her interests, and seemed to genuinely care about her well-being. Over time I came to appreciate that he was someone who helped provide stability in her daily life. We were never close friends, but we were respectful toward each other. For years I believed we had a healthy co-parenting dynamic. Whenever Lily had a big decision, school choices, extracurricular activities, future plans, her mother, Mark, and I would usually talk about it together. At least that's what I believed was happening. Lily has always been an incredibly bright kid. From a young age, she loves science and technology. When she was about 10, I gave her a small coding kit as a birthday present. I thought it might just be a fun toy. Instead, she became obsessed with it. She started teaching herself programming, building little games, and watching hours of tutorials online. Every time she visited my house, we would work on small projects together. Those were some of my favorite memories with her. As she got older, her interest only grew stronger. By the time she was in high school, she was already far ahead of most of her classmates in computer science. Naturally, I started thinking about her future. College isn't cheap, and I knew that if she wanted to pursue a strong program in technology or engineering, the cost could be significant. So about 8 years ago I made a decision. I opened a dedicated college savings account for Lily. Every month, without fail, I transferred a portion of my income into that account. Sometimes it wasn't easy financially, but I considered it one of the most important responsibilities I had as a parent. Over time the account grew to a significant amount, not enough to cover every possible expense, but definitely enough to give Lily a strong start without overwhelming student loans. Throughout those years, I occasionally mentioned the account to Lily's mom and Mark. They always seemed appreciative and supportive, or at least that's what I thought. Last weekend we all had dinner together to celebrate Lily's acceptance into several universities. It was a huge moment for her. She had worked incredibly hard throughout high school, and I was proud beyond words seeing those acceptance letters. During dinner we started discussing which school she might choose. That's when Mark casually said something that immediately caught my attention. He mentioned that Lily wouldn't need to worry about tuition anyway because the college fund had already been helping out 4 years. At first I thought I misunderstood him. So I asked what he meant. Mark looked confused and said something along the lines of, the account you set up, it's been helping with her private school tuition. My heart immediately started racing because that was the first time I had ever heard anything about my college savings account being used for something else. I asked Lily's mom about it, and suddenly the entire mood at the table changed. After an awkward silence, she admitted that several years ago they started withdrawing money from the account to pay for Lily's private high school tuition. Apparently they believed the school would give her better academic opportunities. The problem is, no one ever told me. 4 years I believed that account was growing untouched for Lily's future education. Meanwhile, thousands of dollars had been quietly withdrawn. When I asked why they never discussed it with me, Lily's mom said they assumed I would understand since the money was ultimately still being used for Lily's education. But from my perspective, that decision should never have been made without my knowledge. That account represented years of careful planning and financial sacrifice. If we had discussed it together, maybe I would have agreed. But instead, they made the decision on their own and simply never mentioned it. Now the account has far less money than I thought it did. And Lily may have to take on significantly more student loans than I had planned for. Since that dinner, Lily's mom and Mark have both insisted that I'm overreacting. They say the money still went toward Lily's education, so it shouldn't matter. But to me, the issue isn't just the money. It's the fact that something so important was kept from me 4 years. And now I'm questioning how many other decisions about my daughter's life might have been made without my knowledge. I've been considering taking legal action to prevent any further withdrawals from the account and possibly recover what was already taken. But some family members say that doing so would create unnecessary conflict and hurt Lily in the middle of everything. So I honestly need to know, am I the asshole for being angry that my daughter's college fund was used without my knowledge and wanting to take steps to protect what remains? Or should I accept that the money still went toward her education and try to move forward without turning this into a bigger conflict? I didn't realize something was wrong until a stranger asked me a question I couldn't answer. Are you the brother who sold the house? At the time, I genuinely thought the man had confused me with someone else, but within the next 48 hours, I would discover that one of the most important things my parents left behind had been secretly sold, and the person responsible was someone I trusted more than almost anyone else. Now my entire family is divided, and I'm being told that I'm cruel for refusing to let it go. I honestly don't know anymore if I'm protecting what's right or destroying my family over money. So please read this and tell me what you would do. I 38M grew up in a small town with my younger brother, Ryan. 35 meters closing parenthesis. Our parents were not wealthy by any means. My father worked as a mechanic for most of his life, and my mother worked at a local school cafeteria. But what they lacked in money they made up for in effort. They were the kind of parents who worked incredibly hard so their kids could have better opportunities. One of the things my father was most proud of was a small piece of land he bought when Ryan and I were kids. It wasn't anything fancy, just a modest house on several acres outside town. But he always talked about how it was something he hoped would stay in the family for generations. My parents raised us in that house. Every major childhood memory I've happened there. Birthday parties, summer barbecues, family holidays. It wasn't just property to us, it was home. When Ryan and I became adults, our lives took different directions. I moved to a nearby city for work and eventually started a career in accounting. Ryan stayed closer to our hometown and worked various jobs over the years, mostly in retail and hospitality. Despite living in different places, we stayed close. When our father passed away 7 years ago, it was one of the hardest moments of our lives. My mother stayed in the house, and both Ryan and I visited her frequently. 3 years ago, our mother also passed away after a short illness. Losing both parents felt like the ground had disappeared beneath us. In their will, the house and land were left to both Ryan and me equally, because I lived farther away and had a demanding job. Ryan suggested that he temporarily take responsibility for maintaining the property. He said he could handle basic upkeep, mowing the land, paying property taxes, checking on the house. At the time it sounded completely reasonable. I trusted my brother completely. For the next few years, that arrangement seemed to work fine. Ryan would occasionally send me updates about the property. Sometimes he mentioned small repairs or improvements he was making. I appreciated that he was putting effort into maintaining the place. We occasionally talked about maybe renovating the house one day or turning it into a family retreat. There was never any discussion about selling it. Not once. That's why what happened 2 weeks ago completely blindsided me. I was visiting my hometown for a friend's wedding and decided to drive past the old house for nostalgic reasons. As I pulled up near the property, I immediately noticed something strange. There were construction vehicles parked near the driveway. Workers were tearing down the old wooden fence my father had built years ago. Confused, I stopped and asked one of the workers what was going on. He casually told me the new owners planned to start renovating the property soon. I honestly thought he was joking. When I told him was one of the owners, he looked genuinely surprised. Then he asked that question I mentioned earlier. Wait, aren't you the brother who sold the house? That's the moment my stomach dropped. I immediately called Ryan. At first, he didn't answer. When he finally called back later that evening, his explanation left me completely stunned. About 4 months ago, he had apparently been approached by a real estate developer who was interested in buying the property. According to Ryan, the offer was too good to pass up. Instead of discussing it with me, he decided to go ahead with the sale. He said he believed I would eventually agree anyway. When I pointed out that the property legally belonged to both of us, he admitted that he had signed paperwork claiming he had full authority to sell it. He insisted it was just a technicality and that he planned to give me half the money once everything was finalized. But the situation is much more complicated than that. The property wasn't just valuable financially. It was the only real legacy our parents left behind. And now it's gone. When I told Ryan I was furious and considering legal action to challenge the sale, he became extremely defensive. He argued that selling the property was the smart financial decision. He also claimed that maintaining the house had been a burden on him for years, while I contributed nothing. Some extended family members have taken his side. They say the property was just sitting there unused, and that I should be grateful he handled the sale and will still give me half the money. But to me this feels like a massive betrayal, not just because of the money, but because a decision that big should never have been made without both of us agreeing. That house represented our parents, our childhood, and our family history. Now a developer is planning to tear it down and build luxury homes on the land. I've already spoken to a lawyer who believes there may be grounds to challenge the sale if Ryan misrepresented ownership, authority, but doing that would likely cause a major legal battle within the family. Some relatives say taking my brother to court would permanently destroy our relationship. Others say that if I let this go, I'm basically allowing him to get away with stealing something that belonged to both of us. So now I'm stuck trying to figure out what the right decision is. Would I be the asshole if I pursued legal action against my own brother to challenge the sale of our parents' house? Or should I accept the money, try to move on, and avoid tearing my family apart?